Alrighty, guys and gals. I hope your season is going well. We're about halfway through. Thanks for sticking with the show. Make sure you go to sportingchancepod.com to get some Sporting Chance merch. New stuff coming soon. What we have up there is limited, and once it's gone, it's gone. Casey, are your goshawks still alive?
Yeah, surprisingly.
Well, if your goshawk is not alive, make sure you go to North Mountain Goshawks. Holla at our boy Seth Roy to put a deposit on next year's hunting partner. Casey, how's your gear holding up?
It's holding up good because it's from Midnight Falconry, the tightest braided equipment on the market. Visit midnightfalconry.com.
Casey, old boy, tell you what, I'm wearing out my squirrel chaps.
I'm sure you are.
Or as Joseph Carter would say, squirrel chaps. That's why I need to hop on to mountainstatefalconrysupply.com and order some new ones. You know, the best thing about that is...
What is that?
The customer service and the speed of shipping, baby.
What I'm talking about.
Heather's probably reading my mind right now, and they're probably going to show up tomorrow.
Your new chaps?
Chaps.
Chaps, that's right. Forgive me.
Casey, are you sick of your dogs this season?
We have good days and bad days.
I have been running the brakes off my dogs this season. I can't imagine doing falconry without my dogs. So if you do not have a dog, go to Clover Creek Canine on Facebook and talk to friend of the show, Sean O'Neill, about getting a new hunting partner.
Good idea. Can't go wrong. All right, everybody. Little public service announcement. We are killing it. We see the downloads. We can see everything behind the scenes, how many of you guys are listening and enjoying. The YouTube is, nobody really listens there, but if you could listen there or at least go and subscribe the Sporting Chance podcast Facebook page and YouTube page, we'd appreciate it. Also, little thing for you guys to jump in on. If you leave us a 5-star review on whatever your preferred podcast platform is, we will send you a sticker in the mail. Now, obviously, we have a lot of listeners, so we can't send full sticker packs or anything crazy, but we will send you a sticker, and we appreciate the support. And if you leave a 5-star review, send a screenshot to the Sporting Chance podcast Instagram, or even me on my main Instagram, NJ Falconry. I will make sure that we get a sticker out to you ASAP. Appreciate it, guys. Now enjoy this episode.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Sporting Chance podcast. Today we are joined by a very special guest, Al Franke. Al is a falconer in Canada. He is the host of the Fat Bird Ugly Dog podcast. He is, check my notes here, he is on the Falconry Fund board as a NAFA trustee. And he also sits on the NAFA Conservation Committee. And just in general, seems to be a scholar on falconry. Is that fair to say, Al?
Well, that's maybe embellishing things a little bit there, Aaron, but...
That's what we do around here. We embellish things.
Okay.
So, welcome to the Sporting Chance podcast.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for agreeing to host me. As I mentioned, when we first started talking about the possibility of coming on Sporting Chance, I wanted to talk to you about the Falconry Fund. And then I know that you guys are also interested in talking about history of wild take, and then, of course, perhaps if time allows it, some general falconry.
Yeah. So I say let's kick things off with a little bit with your background. So
Sure.
For those of you out there who may not be aware, Al informed me that he is, in fact, African.
I am. Yeah, I was born in Zimbabwe, was called Rhodesia at one point in time. Spent my entire youth there. That's where I started my falconry. And then immigrated from Zim to Canada, where I did all of my university. Took a hiatus when I first came to Canada because I just didn't, from falconry, that is, because I just didn't understand what was required to get into it. And then, somewhere around the mid-90s or so, got back into falconry and did the same thing that most people do, which is start with a red-tailed hawk and go through the apprenticeship program. And then for me, I graduated on to flying long wings, now flying a Passage Prairie Falcon after I lost both my birds earlier on this fall. I'm running a German wirehead pointer and also working with a wirehead Wiesler.
Very cool. I'm very curious what type of birds you'll see people flying in Zimbabwe.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I started off with a black-shouldered kite. I then went on and flew a greater kestrel. Of course, that was at a point in time when there was no telemetry, and flew that bird over what we call a grass fire. I mean, you guys in the South would know about those. And she just went up on a thermal and then just drifted out of sight, never found her again. But the people that also what is referred to as a shikra or a little banded goshawk, flew those on small passerines. They, if you want to call it, my mentors, they were all flying long wings, and that was on doves or alternately spurfowl, ducks as well, and then of course the various incidental species that are caught along the way.
Fascinating stuff. Very cool stuff. Now I have a question. I have like a stupid question. When you're out there in the bush, as you guys would say it,
yeah, the felt.
That's okay? Do you have to worry about like large predators? Like keep your eyes out, or is it not like? Because I always see these videos of guys just like running through the grass, chasing stuff, and I'm always like, couldn't there be like a lion in there? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it might be a stupid question, but I'm curious.
It's not a silly question for sure. By the time I was doing falconry, the large predators, although they were in areas that were outside either what they referred to as the conservancies, game conservancies, which is where most of the big game hunting takes place, or alternately the national parks, that's where the large predators were relegated to, because much of the landscape, as it is in North America, was relegated to agriculture, primarily tobacco, maize, cotton, those types of things. So those agricultural landscapes, they're not typically the best for some of the large predators. Now, having said that, there's definitely situations where you're dealing with baboons, you're dealing with warthogs, things like that. So, I mean, they're not predators per se, but they're also not you don't want to run into them. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I would not want to run into a troop of baboons out there.
No. Yeah.
So it's similar to America in that you could potentially run into a dangerous predator, but you're probably not going to.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Okay, because just like Casey, I just assumed lions and hyenas and leopards are, out there. But you'd see them semi-often when you're out and about.
Yeah, no, it'd be kind of like running into grizzly bear in Lubbock, Texas.
Really? Okay. All right. What about elephants? So I just watched a video of
even in the agricultural, in the agricultural landscapes, there's elephants. That's probably the biggest problem is elephants.
They're so dangerous. I mean, I knew that they killed people, and I knew from the books that Aaron is currently into. I read a bunch of them already, so I know how they kill people and their methods, and they'll rip limbs off and play with them for 4 or 5 hours and just mush when you go back to find it. And I actually had the pleasure of watching one of those videos the other day, and it's scary because you can't outrun them really. If you're in the open, you're done.
No, and it sounds like you guys may know more about it than I do, so I'll have to listen to you.
I saw a video of a mahout in India, the elephant trainer, and the caption was he was abusive towards the elephant. Who knows what the truth was, but the elephant was just stomping him into the ground, like just pushing on him, and not really stomping hard. It was just kind of slowly pushing him into the ground. It looked like an absolutely brutal way to go.
Yes, I can imagine.
So you never got around to flying any hawk eagles or
no,
African eagles of any sort.
Yeah, I should have mentioned hawk eagles because that's the other species that my mentor would fly. So he had a couple of hawk eagles, Lana falcons, peregrine falcons, but he also had a crowned eagle as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. No, it was a good place to grow up.
I bet it was. It's a shame those are not more common in America, those big African eagles.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got some pretty cool species here. I'm not certain that we would be to any advantage by having those exotics here in North America.
It would. We're going to get to that, but I would say that it would at least give us the option to get one, because as it stands right now, if I lived in Kansas or Texas and wanted to fly an eagle, I couldn't.
Yeah. Well, as you say, we're going to get into that a little bit.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. So, hawking in Zimbabwe, I'm sure that was super interesting. Then you come along to Canada, and you had told me before we started recording that you are predominantly a long winger.
Correct.
And tell us more about that, about your current long wing.
Well, I mean, I was flying a 2 times intermewed peregrine tearsel and a 1 times intermewed female peregrine. Earlier on in the fall, when we have our big migration of waterfowl come through, you can imagine that that's also associated with an influx of both golden eagles and bald eagles. And I was flying my hybrid on a duck pond and went up, was up at about 650 feet mounting. And I was waiting for him to come over, and then took a look and could tell that he was chasing something else. And at that time of year, the field feeding mallards and snow geese and Canada geese you can't get away from them. And so I figured that he was on his way over to take on some field feeding mallards, walked back to my truck. By the time I got in the truck and drove over there, I could see that the speed on the GPS was down to 0. Could see where the location was in the middle of a stubble field. Eventually caught sight of him. And as I was driving over to him, a female juvenile bald eagle was coming in at the same time. And there was just a big flurry of wings. The duck flew away, the eagle flew away, and my hybrid was lying on the ground dead. Not a mark on him other than a few feathers from the back of his skull, and that was it. And so that, I thought, was the end of it was in essence the end of my season from the standpoint of flying the hybrid. But of course, then I had the female peregrine to lean on. And same thing, about a week later, she too took off after some field feeding geese. She ended up tackling a snow goose on a piece of land that I don't have permission on. And took me a while to walk over there. And by the time I had got there, she'd already broken in. She'd started feeding. And, it was pretty clear that there'd been a scuffle, like a major fight. And a couple of days later, was trying to fly her again. She was a little lethargic. I didn't understand what was going on. Thought maybe I had her a little high. She flew off, landed in the middle of the field. And I thought, okay, I'll just give her a few minutes to see whether or not she'll take off. She didn't. So I thought, okay, let me just lure her in. I lured her in. She came in right away, picked her up, fed her, and just brought her home. And then next day I went in to take a look at her, and she hadn't put her crop over. So I was a bit worried about that. Then just offered her a bath, and she jumped into the bath immediately. She regurgitated the food that was remaining in her crop, took a big drink, and then she started to improve over the course of the day. She was less lethargic. Offered her a bath again. She jumped back in. She took another big drink, brought her in from outside where it's a little cooler at this time of year, obviously, and into the garage where I've got some heat on, and just put her on a perch there. And she was muting, things were moving through her gut. And I thought, okay, this is a good sign. Clearly there's whatever she had in her crop has either been regurgitating or is being regurgitated, or she's moving it through her GI. And thought she was a little bit more energetic. I thought I was out of the woods. And then that evening, things took a turn for the worse. Checked on her at about 10 p.m. She had jumped off of her perch and she was lying down. And then came back, checked on her at midnight, and she had already passed away. So I was bummed about that, lost both my birds. Thought, well, I need to find out what transpired here. So took the bird in for necropsy, because I was thinking with the crop being put over and having fought with the snow goose, I thought that perhaps there was some trauma. Turns out that none of that was the case, and that the only goose she had ever killed, the only waterfowl she had ever killed and consumed, was HPAI positive, and that's what she passed away from. Mm. Yeah, so, it took me about 10 days to sort of figure out what I was going to do. Went out and looked on day one for a prairie falcon. Spent 3 days trapping. First day out, I found one, tried to bring her, got pretty sure it was a female, bring it into the trap, wouldn't take it. The next day went out again, thinking I could probably find her. Found another prairie falcon. This time I thought I'm pretty sure was a male, and managed to get him to take the set. Whilst he was on the set, another prairie came in, chased him off the set, and then I played cat and mouse with that prairie for a while. Eventually, she jumped off of the set, having consumed most of the pigeon, and then just took off and landed in a tree. And I suspected that's where she was going to roost for the evening. So that was day 2. Day 3, I went back out to the same location, drove past where I had seen her roosting, or taking a roost anyway, taking a stand in a tree to go and roost, let's put it that way. And no, she had already moved on, carried on looking throughout the morning, turned around to backtrack on my way home, and found her sitting on exactly the same pole that I had tried trapping her from the day prior, and put the set out. This time she came in. She took a couple of passes and eventually bound to it, came in at an amazing speed. I mean, it was just incredible to watch how quickly she came in. Took the set, and then I just gave her lots and lots and lots of room, and just let her consume whatever she wanted to consume. Made my way in very slowly, and pretty soon realized that she was caught, and went in and grabbed her. And I'm just glad it was a passage bird that I could take home. So right. That's what I've been working with for the last couple of months. She's been very, very nice to work with. No problems from the standpoint of hooding. She ate on the fist after day 4. I think the second day I tried to feed her. The hood that I initially had was a pretty poor fitting hood, but she tolerated even that. And then Jeremy Roselle, who you spoke to in a very recent episode, as you guys know, he's a hood maker. He made me a very nice hood. And that thing just dropped on. So by the time I had got to the point where I had managed to unhood her, feed her, rehood her, and then had Jeremy's hood, which just plops on. Hooding has not been an issue at all. Very calm. None of the temper tantrums that people often talk about with passage prairies. But this bird, it's almost like she's a haggard, because she's very, very difficult to make in on. And, there was one occasion where I was thinking, okay, I got her down to a weight. She's eating off the fist. She's coming to the lure. She's coming 40 feet to the fist. Time to get this crayons off of her and go and fly her free. She was probably, I think, 725 at that point in time. Took her out into an agricultural field. And I thought to myself, well, I'm just going to roll the dice in my favor. Going to put a pigeon into a launcher. And as she leaves the fist, as I've cast her off, I will just release the pigeon that was obviously tethered. So let her kill that and then try and make in. And of course, as I walked in on her, she did try to carry, which had been somewhat of an issue when during the crayons period. And I thought, okay, just give her a little bit of time here, stopped, settled down in the snow, made myself small. And she was looking at me pretty wild. She jumped off of the pigeon, jumped back onto it, and then she tried to drag it again and carry it. Eventually, she lost her footing and she decided that the nearby fence post was going to be the place where she wanted to be rather than the pigeon. And I thought, all right, no problem. I'll just toss this dead pigeon out for her. She'll come into that and I'll get her back. Well, what ended up precipitating was about 2.5 hours worth of cat and mouse trying to get her back. With darkness approaching, I figured, okay, she's going to spend the night out. So turned my GPS from eco into extended mode, made sure I had a location on her, a fix on her, and then thought, okay, I'm pretty sure this is where she's going to roost. I didn't really like the place where she was roosting. It was out in the open, pretty low to the ground. And I thought, just let me make sure that she's going to stay there and come back the next morning. Well, she decided that a short-eared owl that started to forage about a half mile away looked pretty good, and she decided to take that on. And of course, the short-eared owl, having extremely low wing loading, just mounted above her. She opted to land on a fence post. And I thought, okay, out of extended mode, back into eco, get GPS location on her again, and then back out of eco and into extended. And again, just a waiting game just for darkness to fall. And then leave her there overnight with the pocket link close by. Well, she had other things in mind. She took off back to where I had tried to lure her into a dead pigeon. She landed on the snow out there and started running around looking for bits and pieces, feathers here, feathers there, a blood splatter here on the snow. And then she took off and landed on a post again. And I thought, all right, same procedure, out of eco, out of extended into eco, update the GPS location. And then again, I figured that just wait her out until it was completely dark. There was a stand of trees that wasn't too far away, and I thought that's likely the place she's going to go if she's going to leave this spot in preference for roosting in the trees. And sure enough, she flew in that direction but landed on a snag. So again, update the GPS location, and then now I'm pretty sure she's going to roost right there, up higher out of the snow, snug tight into the trunk of the tree. And I thought, all right, this is where she'll be. And if I thought to myself, she isn't going to go there, well, she's probably going to go to that stand of trees, a little bit further beyond where she was sitting. And sure enough, as I was watching her, I could see that she had taken off again. And I thought, well, let me just quickly switch back into eco mode here, get a GPS location, and make sure she lands in that stand of trees. And I took a glance at my phone, and surprise, surprise, she wasn't flying away from me. She was flying towards me. And she landed on my truck. And then she left the truck and went back down into the snow where the dead pigeon had been. And of course, I had the pigeons that I had been working with her earlier in the floorboards of my truck. and I just stuck my hand with the pigeon in my glove out of the window. She flew up from the snow onto the canopy of my truck, and I just shook that carcass around in my fist, and I could hear it click, 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 walking over the top of the canopy and onto the roof of my truck and onto my fist. And I just reached up with my right hand, grabbed a hold of her toe, and pulled her in, and got her back. And it's been like that with her the whole time through. So it's I'm having some fun with her. I'm not hunting with her yet, but I'm having some fun with her.
Sounds like a blast.
Now, when you say fun, are you like, quote, fun? Or is it actually fun?
I'm actually having fun with her. This is the first Passage Prairie I've flown. And, I'm learning a lot about what she was like prior to when I got her. So again, as I've said to you, I've been having trouble making into her, and knowing full well that 725 was obviously too high from that experience that I've just described to you. I then brought her weight down. I've had her down closer to the 700 mark. Still difficult to make into, but not I can get her back on my fist. Let's put it that way. And I thought to myself, I'll even try and drone this bird, because one of the things that she's prone to do when I cast her off is just find a place to land, and then she just stands on whatever she's on, a tree or a post or anything like that. And then she just starts scanning the landscape, looking around for partridge. And the one day she did this, and within probably 5 minutes, she found a covey of huns on her own, probably, a good half a mile from where we were. I didn't know they were there, but she could see them. She immediately dropped off of that tree, dropped down low onto the snow, flying about a foot and a half off the top of the snow. And she just flew directly into where the covey was digging. And they saw her coming in. They took off, they beat her to cover, and then she just landed in the trees above the cover. I tried to lure her in from there. She wasn't having anything of it. She flew about another, I'm going to say, mile to the north of me. I tracked her down. I knew she was sitting along a railway line. I thought maybe she can see me. I tried to lure her from there. Either she didn't see me or she ignored me, and she again took off to the northwest. And she landed along a stand of trees along a road. And I thought, okay, this is good. I can get to her from here. Drove down the road. As I approached where she was sitting, I saw her take off. She crossed the road and crashed into a dig of a second covey of huns. So in a space of about 15 minutes, she had found 2 coveys of huns on her own. And she was clearly self-hunting at that point in time. She flew off about 900 feet. And then I took the opportunity there to lure her in. She came in, managed to get her on my fist, and took her home. But same kind of thing has transpired on other occasions where she decides to self-hunt. The other day, thought that, I'll see what I can get out of her today. She took off on me, landed in a tree, and then from that point onwards, she literally flew from farmyard to farmyard and landed, took a stand in trees or on farm buildings, and then just stayed, again, standing tall, looking around the landscape, looking for either pigeons or potentially huns. And I followed her around for a period of about, good 40 minutes, just chasing her from farmyard to farmyard. So it's pretty clear to me how she's been making a living to this point.
I thought longwings are supposed to be civilized.
Long wings or long wingers?
Like
long wingers are civilized, but long wings are not.
My buddy Jake Thomas, I think he's breaking the mold there down in Kansas.
What, not being civilized?
He's not known to be a civilized gentleman, but he's killing it with a Passage Peregrine.
Oh,
no,
right on.
It sounds like chasing a wigged out goshawk around.
Yeah, I don't have any experience with goshawks, but I know they can be a little touchy, and prairie falcons have the same reputation for being a bit touchy. Again, I only have N of 1, so I can't really comment on generalizations, but certainly I think there's probably parallels between goshawks and prairie falcons more so than they are between goshawks and peregrines, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you're thinking pull out the drone, get this bird in the habit of just coming out of the hood and going up.
That's the goal. So, now I'm trying to teach a wild bird about the drone, and that has its little challenges as well.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
For some reason, I've always thought prairie falcons were cool, but they sound like they're a lot of trouble.
No, they're a pretty bird. There's no doubt about that, and particularly when they're in their adult plumage, those are soft, muted colors on their back, and it's really an incredible look to a bird. Much more subdued, obviously, than a peregrine, or some of these dark jurs or white jurs too, or some of the hybrids that take on those characteristic traits of being either very, very dark or very, very white. But man, a prairie falcon's a pretty bird.
Oh, they're pretty, and they're known to be one of the hardest hitting longwings there is.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that yet, but time is on my side.
Yeah.
Watch this be an amazing bird. I wouldn't be surprised.
I hope so.
If it was.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
I think the way, because you're on the show now, so now you're going to come under the umbrella of our luck. And Aaron had an absolute nightmare of a red tail. I had a complete spaz of a Tiercel goshawk, late pulled IS, and now he's a killing machine. Super chill. Aaron's red tail crushed a squirrel at the North Carolina meet in front of us. Just turned out to be really good birds.
Okay, so we should change the name of the show from Sporting Chance to Sporting Luck.
Yeah, because it's not. We don't always have good luck, but
okay.
Just saying, it's crazy because your initial reaction after months is to just give up.
Yeah,
and if this was if I bought this goshawk, I would be tempted to give up. But since I pulled it for the first time in my life, this was I'm like, all right, I have to just keep going out there every day and keep teasing him and getting him aggressive, trying to mask the fear. And I was on the phone with all different kinds of guys, and Aaron, same thing. Bird would not calm down, right, Aaron? Sitting on the glove, just wouldn't calm down. Traditional training would not calm down. He's out there sending me videos. He's like flicking tidbits, doing like goshawk techniques on it. And then sure enough, just something clicked.
Yeah. And Mark Williams, who's just south of me, he's flown a couple of passage prairie falcons as well. And he says to me that that's the same thing, that something happens, something just clicks, and you go from having a real challenge to it being fairly smooth after that. So I haven't got to that point, but hopefully I do.
Yeah, hope so.
So what are your plans for next year? Are you hoping to?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably at a point now where I'm 50-50 on whether I actually keep this bird. If I release it, I'll release it just prior to the breeding season. And, I know where I caught her, and it would be kind of nice to let her go, let her do her thing over the course of the summer. I doubt she'd breed being a passage bird, but, maybe she'll stay in that same location. And, I had pretty good luck catching her the first time. Maybe I'll get an opportunity to catch her again. If that works, great. If not, nothing lost. And I'll likely get another hybrid, was what I would do.
That concept of catching the same bird over the course of years and flying it is really interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't be the first guy to have done that. It's happened before. Al Ross used to do that with merlins. I think he called it outer mewing, something along those lines. And so, chances are not great, but it's not zero either.
In the Stephen Bodio book, Rage for Falcons, there's the talk of calling down the same red tail every year.
Yeah.
And flying it.
Yeah. It's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like the dream come true. That's kind of what we imagine falconry being like.
You bet.
Is this bond with this wild hawk.
Sure.
Yeah. So, sounds like you've had a rough go at it this year. I think a lot of us who've been doing this long enough can relate. It's bound to happen eventually to have that horrible stroke of luck.
Sure. But, yeah. It just, it is what it is. You just roll with the punches.
Here's hoping that that your string of bad luck is over with.
Oh, I appreciate that, Aaron. Thank you.
So you're welcome. Let's talk about the some of the work that you're doing these days.
Yeah. So I, as you mentioned in the introduction, I am on the board of the Falconry Fund. And that's primarily why I wanted to talk to you guys. I'd like to let your listeners know a little bit more and your viewers know a little bit more about the Falconry Fund.
Sure.
But, before I begin to do that, I'd like to know from each of you what you either know about the Falconry Fund, or perhaps assuming that you did a little bit of research ahead of the episode, what you knew about the Falconry Fund prior to your research.
I know that they're mad at us.
The Falconry Fund is mad at you?
Peregrine Fund.
Peregrine Fund. Different organization.
Okay.
So,
yeah. What's the difference between them?
Okay. Well, you know what? Okay. Well, let's, Aaron, you were going to, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Aaron, answer. I answered.
My limited understanding of the Falconry Fund is I believe it's the International Falconry Fund.
Okay. So there's a reason why I wanted to ask you that question, because ultimately, Casey's response was one of mixing up the Peregrine Fund with the Falconry Fund, and Aaron, yours was mixing up the International Association of Falconry with the Falconry Fund, which is not unusual.
Trying to make us look stupid, Aaron.
No, certainly not.
I'm just kidding.
No.
This will all get edited out, Casey.
Anything that we look stupid, we're going to edit out. So let's try.
Yeah. What I was going to say to you, Casey, was you do a good enough job of that on your own. I don't need to help you with that.
Believe me, I heard it all. I see the comments. Don't worry.
Yeah. But it's typical. There are a lot of people that don't know about the Falconry Fund, and there are a lot of people that, if they've heard of it, they don't really know what it does. So, you mentioned the Peregrine Fund, Casey, and we all know what NAFA is. And each of those organizations, including the Falconry Fund, are tax-exempt organizations, entities. They have a tax-exempt classification. And you've likely heard of them, the 501c3s, the 501c7s, the 501c4s. So follow-up question for you, wondering whether you guys actually know the difference between each of those tax-exempt classifications.
I wasn't aware that this was a questionnaire. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's tax exempt, and you have to file certain things. Some of them are mandatory. You have to disclose where money is going, how much money is paid to officers. You have to do a full public breakdown of where all the money goes. Others, you don't necessarily have to show all that. Like a church, I think is like a 501c7 or something, where they don't have to disclose where their money goes, and that's why a lot of people want them to become a 501c3 that's public, where you see where the money goes and how it's dispersed. Okay. So yeah.
So you've got a pretty good understanding of the whole setup. One of the other distinctions between the C3, the C7, and the C4 is what they're designed to do. So C7, NAFA is a C7, and it's classified as a social organization. So they make their money through memberships. A 501c4 is an organization that would be, say, based in Washington, D.C., and they spend a lot of time lobbying. And the 501c3 is, as you pointed out, Casey, something like a church or a scientific organization. And the Peregrine Fund is a 501c3. And the Falconry Fund is a 501c3. And organizations like the Archives of Falconry or North American Grouse Partnership, they're all 501c3s. So what's different between the 501c7, as in NAFA, if you donate money to NAFA, you're just donating money to NAFA. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. Lots
they're
of
lining
people
their
do.
pockets. We've seen how they behave themselves. Lavish meals, wine.
Seen it firsthand.
Well, if that were to be true, you guys would be the first to be volunteering for the board. And seeing as you're not. Yeah. So the 501c3, on the other hand, if you donate money to a 501c3, you will get a tax receipt. So there is a tax advantage to you as the donor for contributing money to a 501c3.
Yeah, it's a wealthy people have charities and stuff like that, so they can donate their own money to it to avoid taxes, but they're on the board of the charity and they receive a check from the charity. So it's a way to shield themselves from taxation. But yes, I'm aware. I don't know if the audience is aware, but
yeah. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah.
Now, so a little bit more. I mean, I'll tell you a little bit about the structure of the organization. So as you've mentioned, Casey, it has a board. Our president is a guy by the name of Mark Adam. He hails out of Ontario, Canada. He flies mostly long wings in Saskatchewan. Vice president is Mark Williams. He's also a long winger. He's living in southern Alberta. Another Canadian is our secretary. She does a pile of work, as you would know if you've been on any board anywhere. The secretary has a pile of work to do. Our secretary is Nikki Warren. She's from Eastern Canada, spending a lot of time trying to get getting falconry organized formally on the East Coast. And then our web master, who we're very grateful to have, is a woman by the name of Diana Morrissey. She does web work for a living. She's based out of Massachusetts. Most of the work that she does is making certain that our website is fully functional and fixing errors where errors need to be fixed. Our treasurer is a guy out of Oklahoma, Chris Langevin. He's a Harris Hawker, flies a cast of Harris Hawks. And then we have a second Okie, if I can call him that. It's Mark Waller. Mark Waller is a well-known falconer, flew red tails, goshawks, flown small and large falcons. Now he's flying mostly hybrids. And of course, he flies ducks and prairie grouse. And then one of our other trustees is a woman out of Nevada. Her name is Cedar McClurg. She's flying Harris Hawks, and she's also flown goshawks, and she flies jackrabbits in the desert out there. She also flies Aplomado falcon and hunting small birds. So that's the board. Now, of course, every board, every organization has a vision and a mission. And in our case, our vision is to, in essence, seek out projects that show a means of making an impact in one of four core areas of focus. So those four core areas are being conserve, preserve, educate, and communicate. So you might ask, what are we conserving? Well, it would be anything to do with raptors, anything to do with their quarry, and anything to do with habitat that each of those entities reside in. And preserve would be things like cultural heritage, falconry traditions, and so on. Education and communication, I think, are pretty straightforward, but we like to support projects that are a catalyst for making connections between people and birds of prey.
Love it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the vision. But any organization with a broad vision also has to have a pretty discrete mission. And in our case, we do three things: we solicit, we steward, and we distribute funds. And we do that in order to support any endeavor that safeguards the practice of falconry. So that's, in essence, the mission and the vision. I could tell you a little bit about the history of the organization. It was, I've already said, it's a 501c3. It was started by NAFA. And the reason that NAFA, the C7 parent organization, realized that they needed a partner organization that was a 501c3 was because of the situation that we mentioned earlier, which was you donate something to NAFA, you just donate it. There is no return to you as the donor from the standpoint of anything associated with tax benefit. And this came to light in and around 1990 when a previous president of NAFA, a guy by the name of Dan Cover, you guys may know that name. He was a falconer, he was a rancher, and he wanted to leave part of his estate to the falconry community. And he tried to leave it to NAFA. That was his objective, and decided that ultimately he couldn't because it could not do anything from the standpoint of fulfilling his estate planning goals. So recognizing that a 501c3 was needed, NAFA leadership helped lay the groundwork for what was to become ultimately the Falconry Fund as it is today.
Interesting.
We
exactly.
I can't speak for Casey, but we didn't realize that this was NAFA propaganda that you wanted to discuss today.
I did hear about this with the property and the setting up of the organization. I just didn't put two and two together until you mentioned it.
Yeah.
I did hear about this. So now does the Falconry Fund have ownership of that property?
Well, no. So if you're referring to the property that Dan Cover was wanting to donate, that went elsewhere. So both NAFA and the Falconry Fund lost that opportunity. And this is why people like James Maynard, for example, realized that if there's going to be people in the future that want to donate things like, it might be an insurance, what do you refer to them as? An insurance policy? An insurance policy that could be left to the falconry community. They would do it through the Falconry Fund. So let's talk, I guess, about those three: solicit, steward, and distribute. And I guess we could start with how do we distribute it? And really, there's you can either, as an individual who wanted funding to do a project, you can apply to the Falconry Fund for funding. And as you can imagine, podcasts are one of those things that the Falconry Fund would be interested in funding. So you guys could apply to the Falconry Fund to support the Sporting Chance project. So, there's three ways that we do that. We do it through what we go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just burst out laughing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you think that's not likely to happen, Casey?
I don't know. If they just listen to a couple of key episodes, I think they'll probably.
Oh gosh, no. I mean, I've listened to the episodes with both Heath and with Corey, and one with Joe G and John Darpino. Yeah. I mean, those would be the episodes that you're referring to.
No, and he's probably talking about Sean O'Neill.
Those are
Oh yeah, okay.
Those are ours. That's on our best behavior.
But I mean, that's all water under the bridge. And I can tell you this, as somebody who sits on the NAFA Conservation Committee, the way that if, for example, you guys were to submit a proposal for support, it comes to the Conservation Committee, and we make the recommendation. We adjudicate all the proposals that come in. We adjudicate them. We assign the amount of funding that would go towards each of the project, and then it goes to the NAFA board to be ratified. So, I think if you guys were to submit a proposal, you would receive a fair adjudication. Let's put it that way.
I
Appreciate
think so,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I couldn't.
No, that's okay. But there are 3 grants to which people can apply. One is the President's Grant, and this grant is not public. What we do is the Falconry Fund board itself looks for projects, and then if we feel like we want to fund it, then we just take some money that we have and we fund that particular project. We also have the NAFA Small Grants Program. So NAFA for decades has been funding worthy projects through their Small Grants Program. And it's got to the point now where 50% of the funding for any particular project comes from NAFA and the other 50% comes from the Falconry Fund. And then the third grant that we have is what is referred to as the Pineo Memorial Scholarship. And this stems from the Falconry Fund working on behalf of what was set up initially as the Pineo Memorial Fund by Trish Pineo, Doug's wife, after Doug passed away. And the work primarily done by, Trish at the center of it, but then Lauren Reddick and Sheldon Nicole as well. And that particular scholarship is to help support youth or newcomers to the falconry community. So a good example would be, Aaron, you have an apprentice. That apprentice wants to attend the NAFA meet, doesn't have the funding to do so. That apprentice can apply to the Pineo Memorial Scholarship for funding to help your apprentice go to the NAFA meet, or say something along the lines of attending the Archives of Falconry Spring Rendezvous. Again, somebody new to falconry or an apprentice, a newcomer to the sport, can do that.
Well,
so that's.
I have an apprentice right now. I have 2 apprentices right now, one of which, if he's listening, is probably salivating at the prospect.
There you go. And
money.
This is what we want. We want people to understand that the Falconry Fund is here to try to support worthy causes, just like the one you're describing.
I don't know that I would call that cause worthy.
Well, I think that probably has bearing on his supervisor more than anything else.
For those of you out there who have had the privilege of speaking with Doug Pineo before his untimely passing, what an incredible, generous, kind guy. And that seems like a great way to honor his memory.
Exactly. He was into dogs. He was into fishing. He was a biologist as a professional life. As you say, I mean, Pineo equipment, it's some of the best equipment out there.
Yes.
So that's in essence one way to distribute. So then you say, well, okay, that's good to know that there are those kinds of places where you could fund your project if you had a project that you wanted funded. So the question then is, well, what kind of projects are you currently funding? And so through the President's Grant, what we've done is we've taken some money. If you know Jeremy Bradshaw, he wrote the Passage Merlin. And if you know him more than that, you will know that he is also a wildlife sculptor. He sculpts in bronze, and he's got some fantastic pieces. And one of the pieces that he has is of a peregrine falcon that the piece is called Surf Skimmer. And what we've done is we partnered with Jeremy, and he gave us a very, very good rate for the sculpture. And we have taken it off of his hands, And what we've done is we've donated the sculpture to the Archives of Falconry on the condition that the Archives of Falconry then turns around and does some sort of fundraising campaign to support projects that would be of interest to the Archives of Falconry. In terms of the NAFA small grants funding, what we've done there is this was fairly recent. Those projects, there were 6 projects that were submitted to us this year. 3 of them were funded. One of them was funded one of the projects that was funded was Brian Millsap's New Mexico Cooper's Hawk study. And in essence, what the purpose of this project was to get all sorts of vital rates data on a representative raptor, and in this case, the representative raptor being the Cooper's Hawk. And then that demographic models that Brian Millsap would build would then be used by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And they would be used in that capacity to determine allowable harvest rates. So not just allowable harvest rates for Cooper's Hawks, but to generalize to other species as well.
Yeah, we need a study like that for goshawks, because goshawks are next on the chopping block. That's their plan.
There you go. So
Michigan shut down, which is completely unfounded that Michigan shut down. PA shut down. Their goal is to shut it down in the entire United States. So we have to get ahead of that.
Well, this would be one way to do it. And certainly if there were people that were interested in doing, say, goshawk surveys or anything along the lines of collecting the type of data that a demographic model requires, then certainly the Falconry Fund would be interested in supporting either individual falconers or individual clubs to do goshawk surveys. Of course, it'd have to be done in a robust way. One of the other projects that we supported this year was a project that's entitled Digital Desert Hawking 2. So there probably isn't a falconer alive who doesn't know of Harry McElroy, and most people will know that he passed away in 2024. And what this project is the plan for this project is to take Desert Hawking 2 and using AI reproduce Desert Hawking 2 in an oral fashion in Harry McElroy's voice. And then that product would be available worldwide to any falconer anywhere on the planet through the Archives of Falconry.
For free?
For free. So all you need to do is have access to the Archives of Falconry collections. And if you have access to that, then the likelihood that you could go in and actually listen to Desert Hawking 2 being read in the voice of Harry McElroy, that could be done.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, another worthwhile project. And then, of course, there's the third project we funded was a project on American kestrels. And in this particular case, the idea was to try to support a nest box study, but in addition to that, support a mark recapture study of individual kestrels outside of the breeding season to try to understand the way in which breeders would either immigrate into or out of that breeding season. I beg your pardon, into or out of that study area.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so those are three.
Is interesting. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
On my way to work, I see kestrels from mid-October until March. And it's in agricultural fields. They'll be on the wires, and then they disappear. Totally gone.
Okay.
I don't see them anymore after that.
Anybody in your area trapping those birds and marking them?
No.
Yeah, well, there you go. That would be a project. That would be very interesting for your local club to get involved in. Trap kestrels, mark kestrels, and the Falconry Fund would be very pleased to consider that project.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the steward, and that's the distribute part of it. So how do we go about soliciting it? Well, here we
go.
Yeah, exactly.
Here we go.
Trying to get my dad would say, trying to get my wallet.
Well, I mean, the reason that I spoke about the types of projects that we did before telling you that we want your money was to try to get across the point that we spend it on worthwhile projects that benefit raptors and falconry and falconers. So, there's the standard give online. So if you want to go on to the website and you want to give online, you can do that. You can, you get a tax deductible receipt. You can give either one time or you can give on an ongoing basis. And then, of course, we run capital campaigns, and we're currently running a capital campaign, which is what we refer to as our legacy hood project. And there we have Bill Barber, we have Scott Webster, and we have Jeremy Bradshaw. They have all donated hoods to us. You as an individual can buy an opportunity to win all 3 hoods. You get an opportunity to decide which hood you want for which bird, and then you just tell each of those hood makers what it is that you want, and those hood makers will make those hoods for you. That capital campaign ends end of February, and the month later, your hoods will arrive in the mail. So one opportunity will cost you $10, and 6 opportunities to win will cost you $50, and 18 opportunities to win will cost you $125. And then we take any funding that comes from that capital campaign and other capital campaigns that we do, and we turn it back into funding for scholarships and worthwhile projects. And then the last way that you can donate goes all the way back to what we spoke about earlier, and that would be Dan Cover. Dan Cover wanted to donate part of his estate. And of course, there are people who are my age and older who are getting to the point where considering things like donating parts of our estates to an organization. We want the Falconry Fund to be at the front of people's minds if they're in the position to be a benefactor in that way. So that's it. That's really all I have to say. That's the pitch for people to support the Falconry Fund and what it is.
So I just took a look at the Legacy Hoodmaker series. That's $10 donation to be entered is pretty reasonable. 6 draws for $50, not bad. 18 for $125 for these beautiful hoods that are hundreds of dollars each if you were to order one.
Exactly. That's the whole point. Try to get people to understand that if you go out and you buy a hood, it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more than $125 these days.
Mm-hmm. Yep, especially from a good hood maker. I got a Barber hood on my goshawk right now.
There you go. And the neat thing about Jeremy Bradshaw, he is a small falcon guy. So, Merlins, Perlins, and he really did focus in on making those smaller hoods. His business was Hun Country Hoods, I believe. Well, no, Big Jer Hoods. Jeremy Roselle was Hun Country Hoods. But Jeremy Bradshaw doesn't make hoods anymore, other than for the odd favor here and there and for his good friends. So for those people who have always wanted Jeremy Bradshaw Merlin hood, for example, this is your opportunity to get one.
Do it.
Well, I don't know about you, Casey, but I'm entering.
I'm going to enter too, Aaron.
No, I'm dead serious. I'm not being a smart ass like you.
No, so am I. But the preserving aspect of the organization, what is being done in the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned cultural heritage in passing.
Yep. Yeah.
I would imagine, and I know a lot of people are not versed on this, and we've discussed it on the show multiple times, and we all don't really have a grasp of the reason why of what the question I'm going to ask you already know, right?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Okay, so why is it in Europe that falconry is protected as a cultural heritage activity, but in the United States it is not?
Oh, okay. So this goes all the way back to, what is the name of that organization? It skips my mind at the moment, but it's recognized as a tangible cultural heritage.
You're talking about UNESCO?
UNESCO. Thanks, Aaron. That's it. For some reason, I was mind blocking on IUCN. I knew that was wrong, but UNESCO. And at one point in time, I think if I'm correct, it was during the first Trump administration where they did not want to sign on to the UNESCO cultural heritage aspect. And then during the Biden administration, that changed. And I'm pretty sure that still remains. So at one point in time, you would have been correct, Casey, that the U.S. was not signed on to the UNESCO cultural heritage component for falconry, but I believe it currently is. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think you're incorrect if I am being honest, because I know I don't think that we're protected under that cultural heritage activity. It's still kind of governed as a privilege and this very sensitive thing that could be taken away from us at any moment.
Well, that's what it is.
Well, it doesn't have any protection that it's a cultural heritage.
No, and I mean those protections.
In Europe they can't outright ban falconry in any of those European countries because it's a cultural heritage activity. They can make the rules more difficult, whatever, but they can never ban it. In the United States, my understanding is that they can, and this is what, NAFA and everybody else, social media posts that could get the whole thing, is the fear is that it will get outright banned. And that's because we are not it's not recognized as a cultural heritage activity.
So the good news is that falconry is recognized in the U.S. as an appropriate way to take game. And that is codified in the falconry regulations. So in order for falconry to be banned entirely in the U.S., you would first have to convince the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the states that falconry should be banned. And I'm not saying it would never happen, but the likelihood that it would happen, in my mind, is very low.
I tend to agree with you. I think that it's we're very low impact, and it's all the science is in our favor. I think if it got to that point and we did a push to educate and explain, I think it'd be pretty easy to overcome that hurdle of what we actually do and our impact. It's pretty insignificant. But the other question I had, and this is something that is state by state, but some states, they have in their state's constitution, they have hunting and fishing in the constitution, that it's your right to hunt and fish. And I'm wondering if it's an option in some of those more open states, at least, to get falconry added. Because I know the trapping community has been trying in some states to have it added, but obviously trapping is a little more taboo, even in those more loose states. So I'm wondering if that's something that's on your radar as something that could be, pushed for, to have hunting, fishing, and falconry as a, in the constitution of that particular state, like Utah, for example, or like some of these states where it's big. California is huge. have that put in there to give them an extra layer of protection.
Say again on California.
California is like one of I think if I'm not mistaken, California has the highest population of falconers in the country.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm saying a state like that would be something that would be an easy sell to have falconry added to, the state's constitution for, an outdoor activity that's protected under the constitution of the state.
Right. Okay. So, and are you asking me about this in the context of my position on the NAFA Conservation Committee?
Either position that you hold, whether it's the Falconry Fund or the NAFA Conservation Advisory Board, is that something that's on anyone's radar at all?
All right. So I think both Heath and Corey addressed that pretty closely. And I think the point that they've made, and I'm sure Jimmy G said the same thing, that in essence, what you are doing is talking about an issue that is relative to the state, not relative to the federal level. And so NAFA, being a national organization, would certainly be in a position to support states and state falconry clubs that wanted to push for the types of assurances at the state level that you're talking about. But beyond that, I don't think NAFA would. I mean, I could be wrong, but my guess would be that NAFA would not take a lead on that in that particular role. It would have to come down to the individual falconers in the individual clubs in the individual states.
Okay. Yeah. I just to be perfectly honest, I'm getting real sick and tired of all the regulations.
This is coming back to a point we made earlier. It's time for you to move to a different state.
Al, you're correct. I need to get the heck out of here.
Yep. Come to Alberta. We'll treat you well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jeremy wants to come up by him, man. He's telling me stories. He's sending me videos of snowshoes up there. I'm about to get up there. I'm about to become Canadian, eh?
There you go. Yeah.
Drink some of that
You're
syrup.
already pretty close. Just hop across the border.
I could be to Canada in less than 8 hours.
Yeah, but you don't want to be in the east. You want to be in the west.
Yes. Yeah. I don't want to here.
Yeah. I mean,
I agree with you. I live in a really bad area.
You want to do what Aaron talked about. Move west of the Mississippi.
Yeah. Where America is.
Just figure out where the Mississippi is and where it would be if it was in Canada and move west of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
If they could have jackrabbits, they've got all types of good game.
They got jackrabbits up there.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So if a spot has geographically, if it could have jackrabbits, it means it has a lot of other cool stuff too.
Exactly.
There you go.
Now, are the regulations more? I know that they're lighter in terms of like import export, because I know you guys have some crazy birds that we really don't have access.
Yeah, here in Alberta, the only exotics that we can fly are Harris's hawk, and we can possess an Aplomado falcon. And the reason that we're allowed those two species is because if we lost them, the likelihood of overwintering, and then, whether or not this is something to really consider, but hybridizing or breeding with local birds is zero. So it's overwinter kill allows us to.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's the reason for it.
Even in the United States, I think the Harris hawk would pretty much die pretty quick.
Yeah.
Unless they're in their tropical habitat with their buddies helping them hunt,
Yeah, but we're not allowed to fly golden eagles.
Okay.
But we can have just about any other species, and of course, we can take gerfalcons from
But some provinces can have golden eagles, correct?
That is a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I suspect that you are correct. I think it's an Alberta specific restriction that says no golden eagles. And there was a push for it at one point in time. Our regs open up every once in a while, call it once every decade. And there have been people who have advocated for adding golden eagles to the list of falconry birds that we can fly. And the only reason that it's still not permitted is because there hasn't been anybody who's attempted to either take, say, for example, a rehab bird, show that they can do well with it, because, flying a golden eagle has its additional complications and complexities that require some additional concerns, additional training, that type of thing. And if people made the effort to do it, I have no doubt that our biologists would say, sure, let's add golden eagles to the list of birds that falconers can fly.
Don't you have white-tailed jacks in Alberta?
We do, yeah.
Seems like something that someone needs to get on.
Well, I mean, we only have, I'm going to say, in the province, call it 50 falconers maximum. And there would be just a handful of people that would want to do that. I'm certain that if the handful of people that wanted to do it were to make the effort to actually go out and do what would be required to show that flying a golden eagle is possible, there would be a huge rally of support for that person among the falconry community. And there would be, I mean, particularly would be the equivalent of your falconry coordinator at your state level, the biologist that deals with us here in the province. He'd have no problem with it. He'd say, sure, good idea. Let's do it.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. It's just a case of somebody advocating for it. That's all.
So you had mentioned when you initially reached out to me that you had some knowledge, let's call it expertise, on wild take.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to, maybe I overstated it. I've certainly been involved in wild take, mostly from the standpoint of the peregrine. And then in the States, the only other species that would be really worthwhile talking about would be the golden eagle, and that's it. But whether or not I'm an expert on it, that's to be debated for sure. But I mean, the way that I look at this in terms of wild take is that there are 4 time periods where take varied. You've got the pre-listing period for peregrines from the late 30s through 1970s, where harvest was in essence unregulated. And then you've got the period during which the species was listed and there was no harvest. And for the Arctic peregrine, that would be from 1970 to 1994. And for the American peregrine, it would be from 1970 to 1999. And then the third period would be that post-listing period when the species had been delisted, but there was still no harvest. And that would be from 1999 till 2008. And then you have the last of the 4 periods, which is the post-listing period, where we do have harvest. And that would be from 2009 to present day. So those are the 4 time periods that you can sort of think about how take varied through time.
Do you know when the take of golden eagle take was reduced or taken away?
You in essence have 2 time periods, pre-2009 and post-2009. And pre-2009, what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service did was they looked at how many golden eagles on average were taken each year. So on average, that average was 6. And so what they did was they said, okay, after 2009, from the standpoint of falconry take, we're going to limit it to 6 birds.
So prior to that, if someone wanted a golden eagle and had the proper licensing, they could just go get one?
That's a good question. So that would be within the Bald and Golden Eagle Act. And I think it was in and around, 1972. That's when the Bald Eagle Act would have been amended to include golden eagles. So prior to that, I'm going to say that there was nothing that would have prevented you from getting a golden eagle.
So in our conversation with Heath and our conversation with Laura Hazlett, the president of the American Falconry
AFC, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They both said that they didn't feel like the demand was there for golden eagles.
Yeah, so U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service data would say, so I would say it's tenfold. So if you think about there is an unmet demand and you have 6 that are permitted, and there's a tenfold unmet demand, that would imply that there's upwards each year of 60 people who would be interested in having a golden eagle.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, because I was trying to look at the email I had from my from a contact, and they told me how many people entered, and it was over 100 people.
Yeah. So what I said was there's a tenfold unmet demand. So tenfold over and above the 6 that are permitted annually.
So that's your understanding, is that's how many people
that's
are
US, that's U.S. Fish and Wildlife data. Now, that's not to say that the email that you have, Aaron, is not accurate. My guess is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service data compiles over a period of time. So on average, tenfold unmet demand. I mean, regardless of whether it's 60 or 100, there's still an unmet demand. And that unmet demand, from a falconry standpoint, should in some way try to be met, of course.
And now, who is that on to try and meet that? Is that on NAFA to try to push, or is that on the state to try to open up more, or the ranching?
Well,
I guess there's like a ranching
I would say it's on the falconry community to do that. And of course, NAFA is a big component of the falconry community. And I know that NAFA is working on trying to support the idea that unmet demand should be met. But it's not as straightforward as one might think. So you have, for example, the Bald and Golden Eagle Act. Well, let's back up a step here. So if you think about golden eagles and being protected, so they would be, that's the Bald and Golden Eagle Act that does that. And if you were a falconer and you're saying, I want to have a golden eagle, there are 2 ways that you can do that. You can do that by harvesting one of the 6 that are permitted, or you could potentially do it by taking on a rehab bird. Now, the wild take, that's 6. You have to understand that comes within the context of all types of take. And falconry take is only one of those takes one of those take types that are authorized by the Bald and Golden Eagle Act. And all take types must be consistent with maintaining sustainable populations. That's what it says in the Act.
Do you know what the other takes are?
Oh, yes. Okay, so there's an entire list of them. And so you can say, okay, let's go from top to bottom. You can have collisions. Collisions would be anything with vehicles, power lines, wind turbines, and so on. Now, as a matter of interest, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has already done an analysis where they've used both banding data and they've used transmitter data, and they're able to estimate annual deaths from each of these types. Does this make sense to you?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Now, from the standpoint of collisions, that number each year is 611 golden eagles. From electrocution, they estimate that 506 golden eagles are electrocuted each year. For shooting, it's 670 golden eagles. Poisoning is 427, and that includes lead toxicosis. Trapping, so typically leg hold traps intended for other wildlife. There's 279 golden eagles. The estimate each year is 279 are incidentally trapped. And then they have things like fighting, which is a non-anthropogenic cause. And they reckon that there are each year 223 eagles that are killed through intraspecific aggression. Disease takes care of about 238. Accident from things that are non-anthropogenic would be 456. And if you can believe this, starvation, and obviously this is probably associated with exposure to harsh weather, but there's 806 eagles each year that are estimated to die from starvation.
I was going to say that's probably the largest hit on them.
Yeah. And as you would expect, the largest proportion of those would be juvenile eagles. So you just get juvenile eagles that make their way south from northern areas, or alternately within breeding areas within the western U.S. They just don't make it. They get to the point where, by virtue of a harsh winter, they can't make a go of it and they just starve. So the main point I guess I'm making is from a wild take standpoint, because golden eagles at this point are considered to be declining, and you have these various different takes, each one of which has a huge number of that takes the golden eagle, there's not going to be an increase in falconry take, at least in the short term. And that really only leaves two options. One is rehab birds, and the other is captive propagation. And
I think captive propagation makes more sense than anything else.
Right.
I don't agree. I would not agree with this, but if you came to me and said, hey, you're not allowed to take golden eagles anymore because their populations are in such decline, we're worried about their longevity in the wild. Okay.
Right.
But you could not rationalize why someone qualified could not breed them for purposes of falconry.
Yeah, and that has been considered. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is open to that. And if you think about the Bald and Golden Eagle Act, it is silent when it comes to anything relative to captive propagation. So it doesn't say you can do it, but it doesn't say you can't do it. And the only other act that is involved is the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And that explicitly includes opportunity for captive propagation of raptors. It's only the golden eagle and the bald eagle through the Bald and Golden Eagle Act where that's the key to the whole opportunity. Now, there's a third component to it, which is the regs themselves. So the captive propagation regs prevent a breeder from breeding golden eagles. So you don't need to, if you assume that the Eagle Act does not need any change, then the only place that there would need to be a change would be within the regulation itself.
Of the propagation.
To me, beg your pardon?
In the propagation aspects.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Exactly.
That sounds easier to manipulate.
Exactly. That's exactly the point that I'm making to you.
Okay.
And the entire, you go back to, is it NAFA's job to do that?
Yes.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%. So
it's all their fault. They have to do everything.
Well,
they need to solve all of our problems.
They have to solve all of our problems so we don't have to do anything. Just kidding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think that's particularly productive, but it is what it is. The point is that the first point you made, Casey, which is, it doesn't necessarily need a change in a statute. It only needs a change in the regulation. And certainly NAFA could, would, and is happy to take a leadership role in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you need? What does NAFA need from? Yeah. What does NAFA need from us to get that ball rolling?
Nothing. NAFA's already working on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're good here then. Thanks for let's call it good.
All right. Yeah, great. Let's call this good.
Yeah, but let's talk a little bit about starvation of 800 birds a year.
Yeah.
Okay. There's an additional study that was done by Christian Hagen, John Goodell, Brian Millsap, and Guthrie Zimmerman.
Friend of the show, John Goodell.
John Goodell is a big supporter of our show. He loves us.
Yeah. Well, we can leave that one well alone. I think you and he have had your back and forth, and we'll just leave it there. But this paper is dead. It's called Dead Birds Flying.
Okay.
And the goal there was to examine the conservation potential for rehabilitated raptors, either at the population level or alternately at the individual level. And this, in the case of take, was done to mitigate the offset for those take types that we referred to earlier that can be considered anthropogenic. And they took a look at, over a 20-year period, the number of golden eagles and 3 age classes that were brought into, and these were just the banded population. So if a banded bird came in, then a banded bird was reported on. But if a non-banded golden eagle came in, then that non-banded golden eagle was not reported. And over the 20-year period that they looked at from the banding standpoint, the banding data, there were 284 nestlings, there were 187 first-year birds, and there were 429 after first-year birds, or 900 birds in total.
Jeez.
So, yeah, exactly. And the point is that there's 20 golden eagles per year on average, banded golden eagles that come in. And if you consider that there is upwards of 800 birds that are starving, it's very likely that many of those birds that come into a rehab facility are simply there because they haven't been able to make it. They're starving. And those would be extremely good candidates for falconers to take on rehab. And if they stayed on the rehab license, they would not be counted against one of the 6. So, which is a good thing. So here again, this is the kind of thing that NAFA could do to promote falconers taking golden eagles.
Sounds like a no-brainer to me.
It's a no-brainer. Exactly.
So what's the status of that?
What's the status of what? I'm not following you there.
Are you proposing this as something they could start doing, or are they already working on this?
I would say these are the kinds of things that NAFA is considering at the Conservation Committee level. And of course, the Conservation Committee is just a Conservation Committee.
Well, this is
everything.
The kind of thing. Sorry. This is the kind of thing that is win-win for falconers and for the general public, because whenever we give falconry talks and they say, well, why are you allowed to take a wild bird from the wild and keep it? We say, well, the vast majority of these birds are going to die in the wild. Odds are this bird that I'm holding was going to die in the wild. And by me working with it for a few years and then releasing it, it increases their odds of survival exponentially. So that all sounds great. It's convenient for me as a falconer, and it sounds good for public outreach.
It sure does. So if you go back to what we spoke about in terms of the Falconry Fund, and we talk about communication and education, that's the kind of thing that you are doing that. Right? That's the communication education component that we refer to. And we'd like to hear that people are doing that on a formal basis. But let's think a little bit further about these golden eagles that are in rehab facilities that could be potentially taken by falconers, maintained on the rehab license, not counted against one of the 6 that are taken from the standpoint of depredation. That study that I referred to showed that, in essence, one successful released golden eagle contributed to 5.4 individuals added per rehabilitated bird release. Does it make sense if I say that?
Mm-hmm. I believe so, yes.
Okay.
You're saying long term.
So, long term, exactly. Okay. And there's another study. So this is the other side of that. 1 to 5.4 sounds pretty damn good. But there's another study that indicated that it required the release of at least 4 rehab golden eagles to add 1 to the wild population. But there's another obvious application of these ideas. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has already established something that they call a policy of net benefit, or no net loss. Okay, so if you think about the wind industry, for example, there's a take that is allocated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the wind industry to remove golden eagles from the wild, in the same way that a falconer would remove a golden eagle from the wild. So there is a take that's established for the wind industry. There's a take that's established for the electrical industry, power industry. All of these things. Go ahead.
Casey's boy, Donald Trump, he really doesn't, he's not a big fan of the wind industry. So is this subject to change?
The wind industry is a scam. We all know that already.
Everything is subject to change. The main point that I'm making here
I'm not even joking.
is that there is an established policy of no net loss. The examples that I was using from the standpoint of the wind or the power industry was that they can do things that establish a no net loss. Well, think about this in the context of a falconer taking a golden eagle, and let's take the metric of got to rehab 4 to add 1 to the wild population. Well, if falconers then were to rehab 24 golden eagles, that would in essence be a net benefit of 6 golden eagles to the wild population. That offsets the take from depredation. So in essence, our net take is 0. These are the kinds of arguments that should be made. These are the types of arguments that can be made. These are the kinds of things that when you went to the regulators, you could argue for additional take.
Well, let's
Does this make sense?
Al. What are we waiting on?
Right. Well, we're not. Well, okay. So let's go back now. Okay. Let's go back. What are we waiting on? Now, when you spoke to Heath raised the idea of normalization for the peregrine falcon. Right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Do you guys know what normalization is?
I'm assuming by normalization, you're referring to the same type of treatment that red-tailed hawks generally have.
Right. Okay, there you go. But what does that mean? How are red-tailed hawks treated?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Guys
exactly.
So
Guys trying to make us
was that what you were hoping we were going to say? How are they
Yeah.
treated? Well, it depends.
Okay,
If it's my red-tailed hawk, it's treated very well.
Okay, no, that's not what I'm getting at. I'm not talking
No?
about individual birds. Okay.
Yeah,
What I'm
just
talking
teasing you.
about is, So here's the way that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service thinks about it. Have you heard of the concept of maximum sustainable yield?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has figured out what MSY, maximum sustainable yield, is for the majority, if not all, of the falconry species. Okay? What they then do is they say the falconry take will be one of two numbers: 50% of maximum sustainable yield, or alternately 5%, whichever of the two is lower.
Right.
So
Okay.
Are they currently monitoring how many red-tailed hawks are taken from the wild right now?
Okay, so the answer to that is,
it's a yes.
to some degree, yes. So I think I got some numbers on this for you. Let me see if I can find it. All right.
And it's a non-issue because we're nowhere near those numbers.
Oh yeah. So let me see if I can find the actual numbers. Half a second here.
And the maximum sustainable yield is that metric is issued for pretty much every game species in the United States, including trapping and hunting as well, I would imagine. If I'm not
That is the way that they would think about it, Casey. Exactly.
It's the same equation that they're putting together when they're making a decision on all these.
It's the same approach. I'm not going to say it's the same equation, but it's the same approach.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you can think of it this way. All right. Now, let's say your first approach to deciding how many raptors are going to be taken. All right. You can say, all right, well, the population of falconers in North America is approximately 4,500. We can say something like maybe 1/3 of those falconers are not active. So you've got 3,000 active falconers. You can say, well, about 1/3 of those will fly red-tailed hawks. So that's about 1,000 falconers. And then you could say something like half of those 1,000 falconers who fly red-tailed hawks trap a new bird each year. Therefore, the annual falconry harvest is 500. You could do it that way.
Yeah.
That's not the way that they do it. Okay. That would not be considered the approach that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the states support in terms of assigning harvest levels. That's not normalization. So you can think of it as the second approach. You can ask the question, what is the population of red-tailed hawks in North America? The answer to that question is it's about 1 million. About 30% of those are juveniles. So there's about 300,000 juvenile red-tailed hawks. The sustainable rate of take estimated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is 4.5%. So go back to what I said to you earlier, either maximum MSY or 50% of MSY or 5%, whichever is lower. So in this case, they did the math and they said, okay, sustainable rate of take for red-tailed hawks is 4.5%. That equates to 16,200 juvenile red-tailed hawks. So you wouldn't want to, for example, say to NAFA, well, why are you pursuing normalization of the peregrine falcon when there are 144 passage peregrines currently allowed and people don't take 144 birds? That would be the first approach. That's not the way that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service thinks about it. the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would rather say, what is the population of hatchier peregrines? And what is MSY? And in the peregrine's case, MSY is about 16%. So you apply their rule. That rule says, okay, it's 16%, but we're going to cap it at 5%. So what then does 5% mean in terms of the numbers of birds that can be taken? Well, in a normalized situation, based on a 2023 study, for just the northern population alone, that's 1,343, something like that, individual peregrine falcons. So you would want to get to the point where people agree that, okay, 13 greater than 1,300 can be taken, but greater than 1,300 aren't required. In exactly the same way as you can say 16,200 juvenile red-tailed hawks can be taken, but 16,200 juvenile red-tailed hawks aren't required. That's what you want to try to achieve. So back to your question, Aaron, which was, why isn't NAFA doing anything about that? Well, Heath's answer was, currently their priority is normalization of the peregrine falcon. Now, there have been decades upon decades upon decades of work done by dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And those dozens and dozens of people come from all walks of life. But in essence, there's three groups. The first group is the falconers themselves. The second group are those people who are not falconers. You could call them preservationists. In fact, in the early days, it was the Audubon Society that opposed take. They opposed take during the period when peregrines were in decline, when they had been extirpated from much of North America. And you had the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service caught between those two groups, trying to balance off the needs of both those groups. Well, we've got to the point now where we are so close to finishing the job that those dozens and dozens and dozens of people within those groups, the falconry community, primarily NAFA, the non-falconry community, those would be just about everybody else who have equal right to enjoy peregrine falcons to the same degree that a falconer has the right to enjoy a peregrine falcon. It's the job of the Fish and Wildlife Service to balance those needs. And over time, that's what has been done. And the reason that NAFA is so focused on normalization of the peregrine falcon is because in 2023, there was a status report, it's the one I referred to earlier, that indicated there can be a take of up to 1,300 and change birds from the northern population. And so that's the job that NAFA wants to complete.
Right.
Okay.
And then will they move on to other things once we get that over with?
100%.
Oh, let's get
think
the show on the road then, baby.
Exactly, totally. But, you talk about get the show on the road. So, you got to go all the way back to 2008 when the first environmental assessment was done. Okay. And at that point in time, the estimate that they had for hatchier northern birds was in the region of, call it something less than 2,000. Okay. That's the number of birds that they were working from. And again, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had to think about the states, the individual states. They had to think about the individual provinces. They had to think about what the flyway councils were involved in. And they were negotiating among all of those groups. Now, that story in and of itself is kind of an interesting one because in 2008, they offered 8 alternatives. Alternative 1 was do nothing at all, just retain no take. Alternative 8 was what we referred to earlier, normalization. So they would have done their calculation. They would have said, under alternative 8, we can take X number of peregrine falcons, and that's what we're doing. Well, you can imagine U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has done the biology. They go, you know what? Alternative 8 is fine. We can do this. But you had individual states. Those states were primarily in the northeast of the U.S. who were concerned about their local populations being harvested. There were provinces in Canada, specifically southern Alberta. That population of peregrine falcons was not yet considered recovered. And so what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service did was they tried to say, all right, southern Alberta, eastern U.S. states, eastern Canadian provinces, what level of take of non-northern birds would you be willing to allow as incidental take? The answer there was 1%. So they said 1% of the birds that are coming from the north will be those that come from these provinces and states where we're still trying to protect them. We're still trying to protect those particular populations. What that resulted in was a division of the U.S. into left and right, east and west. And in the west, it was limited to take of nestlings and call them sawhawks. And the reason that they did that, they ended the take from the breeding period through to August 30th. The reason they did that was to protect that southern population in southern Alberta. What they also did was they said, all right, the Canadian Wildlife Service said, we want assurances that those birds that are being trapped by falconers are coming from the northern population. And there's you may know of the approach that this is done. You can identify the natal origin of any bird, but in this case peregrine falcons, by looking at the stable isotopes in their feathers. And so you have deuterium, which is a hydrogen isotope. And in essence, what they did was they say, okay, in isotope science, what they have the statement, it's called, you are what you eat. And so you have hydrogen in rainwater. You get heavy hydrogen it's distributed differently across the entire continent of North America. So if you are a passerine that is eating grain, grass, it's a granivore that is eating grass that is grown under conditions of low deuterium, then that passerine takes on that signal. The peregrine falcon that eats that passerine takes on that same signal. The feathers that are grown on that peregrine takes on that same signal. So what did they do? The Canadian Wildlife Service said, we want you, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to collect feathers from every single passage peregrine that is trapped. And then we want you to do an isotope study, and we want you to estimate the proportion of individuals that come from the northern population.
When was this?
This was 2008 was the EA. We talked about alternative 1 versus through 8. The alternative that was negotiated in order for the Canadian Wildlife Service and the northeastern U.S. states to accept alternative 7, which was the preferred option, was a limited harvest of 36 birds distributed across the 3 eastern flyways. 36 individuals. But they had to ensure that there was only going to be 1% of those individuals that came from the southern Alberta population. And they had to, at some point in time, decide or show that greater than 64% of the individuals that were harvested came from the northern population. That was the 2008 EA. That is what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service agreed to in order to get support from the northeastern U.S. states and the Canadian Wildlife Service, 36 birds.
I'm surprised the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was willing to put this much effort into allowing falconers to take.
Aha. This is what I'm referring to. Dozens and dozens of people. Mountains of effort, because the alternative was for the Canadian Wildlife Service to say, no, we don't get support. So falconers, so that was 2008. 2009, we had the take was reinstituted. They collected 21 feathers, call it over the next 3 years, 20 feathers from passage birds taken in 2009, another 20 in 2010, another 20 in 2011. So it took 3 years to get a sample large enough to do the stable isotope study. Okay? That stable isotope study was completed, the analysis, the publication, in 2017. So it took all those years just to do that study. Once that study came out, there was an additional study. That additional study, remember I told you that the estimate that they used was about 2,000 hatchier birds? 2016, an additional study came out, re-estimated using mark recapture analysis, using the banding data. That analysis came out to show that as of the year 2000, there were about 21,000 hatchier birds. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service went back, redid the analysis that they had done in 2008, but instead of applying the 2,000 individuals, they applied the 21,000 individuals. What that ultimately ended up in was an increase from the 36 that were initially agreed upon to the 144 that we currently have. It then took an additional status assessment, again, using complex, robust statistical approaches. It's an approach called integrated population modeling, where they take real data, they estimate things like survival off of the real data, and then they do things like estimate unknown quantities, like what's the population size. Well, study was published in 2023. The data that they used was up to 2020. That now shows that there are approximately a median value of 27,000 hatchier peregrines. This is what normalization means. It means convincing the people at the flyway councils using real science that there are a sufficient number of hatchier peregrines to harvest. Well, with the government shutdown, with the change in the wildlife director, none of that status assessment was put on the back burner. That status assessment is now being considered by the new wildlife director. This is the point at which NAFA finds itself, on the verge of using a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service study to show that the peregrine falcon can be normalized. What that means is, ultimately, you can take 1,300 and something individuals, whether you need them or not. That's what you can take. That's what it means to normalize peregrine falcon take in the context of all of the other species that are taken for the purpose of falconry. The other thing that will then happen is take will then be evaluated, adjudicated, whatever you want to call it, by the states rather than by the flyway councils. What that means is you no longer need anybody from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. You no longer need anybody from the flyway councils taking the time. Those are human resources. There are expenses in and around that. None of that ever has to be done ever again. I can guarantee you this, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would be more than happy not to have to do it. The flyway councils would be more than happy not to have to do it. All we need to have happen is peregrine falcons are normalized relative to every other falconry species that is taken.
Well, frankly, I'm so tired of hearing about the normalization of peregrines that I personally am just cheering for it to happen.
Yes.
So you guys have just worn me out talking about it.
Well, can you imagine how the people who have been involved in collecting the data, like think about that. There was a study in 2016. There was an isotope study. There was the 2023 reassessment. There was the 2008 environmental assessment. Like there would be no such thing as peregrine take if all of those products had not been done.
All jokes aside, that the sheer volume of work that was put into that is impressive.
Totally.
And I think falconers should be grateful of that. Whether or not you have interest in flying a peregrine, I think that you should support that effort. So I do think that would be a very positive step forward for falconry in America. If we could get
100%.
that.
100%.
And then selfishly for me, because I don't actually have any real desire in the immediate future to fly a peregrine, for the people who invested that time and effort to be able to move on to other.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say from the standpoint of the Conservation Committee, a very high priority would be on producing something for NAFA leadership to look at that identified what the challenges are and what the potential solutions are to meeting that unmet demand for golden eagles.
I think that is a great goal. So
yeah, 100%.
Hopefully we see all this happen within the next couple of years.
Yeah. Now I'm going to correct Casey on one thing. Casey, in a number of episodes, you have reiterated that there are permits issued for ranchers to shoot golden eagles.
I was under the impression that was a fact. Which it is a fact in certain instances, yes.
I got good news for you.
Go ahead.
There have been 0 permits issued by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for ranchers to shoot a golden eagle. That's not to say.
How about the USDA? How about the USDA?
Yes. Okay. Now, USDA, they may be able to get a permit to shoot a golden eagle, but it would only be in a situation where, say, for example, it would be because of human safety issues involved with a golden eagle hanging around an airport, for example.
Or a bald eagle or a snowy owl.
Or a bald eagle or a snowy owl. Any other beautiful
bird.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
My information is that if there are any, it's like 1, 2, 3. That's it.
I'm not sure if that's correct.
Okay. Well,
I think they have an allotment. The USDA is worse than they have an allotment of how many they're allowed to shoot.
Okay. But I mean, you have stated in several podcasts that game wardens go out to the ranches, issue a permit, and then the golden eagle puts a hole in the rancher puts a hole in the golden eagle's head. I'm telling you that's wrong.
Okay.
All right.
Fair enough. But they are still being shot legally.
Very, very, very few.
I think
few.
at the airport, I think at LaGuardia Airport when USDA took over, not LaGuardia, JFK, when it was taken over from the Falconers, I believe the number of bald eagles that were allowed to be shot there was they were allowed 25 bald eagles, 50 snowy owls. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're shooting. Correct, but they're shooting them in mass legally, so I'm not wrong. It's just I was wrong about the exact permitting.
They're permitted to shoot that many. That doesn't mean that they do shoot that many.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Okay.
But to Casey's point,
but I think they're still being shot. I think we can both admit that.
Illegally.
And legally on airports and stuff like that. They're
being shot to huge numbers illegally.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not saying that ranchers don't shoot them. I'm saying of the eagles, the several hundred, the 800 or whatever it is that are shot, 600, somewhere in that region, that are shot each year, it's undoubtedly that some of those 600 are shot by ranchers. That is illegal take, not
Correct.
legal.
So what happens in a state that has no depredation for falconry purposes when a rancher reports ewes, baby sheep being killed by golden eagles?
Okay, so let's play a little game here. Let's say you're a rancher. You've got a golden eagle that is potentially going to prey on lambs. What would you do? Outside of shooting it.
Let's just say you called the local game warden and said, I've got an issue with a golden eagle on my ranch.
Yep.
So then what?
Well, then the idea would be you can harass that eagle. So, you can use a scare cannon. You can use you could chase the eagle off. Those kinds of things are permitted. And then the hope would be that the eagle goes, you know what, I'm just getting out of here.
So I'm not trying to contradict you or start a debate, but if a bear is trying to get into my chickens, I can shoot it. But if a golden eagle is trying to get into someone's lambs, he's not allowed to shoot it. I'm incorrect on that? I was told by a game warden, if a bear is trying to kill my backyard chickens, I can shoot it legally. So that would lead me to believe that if
coyote, fox, same kind of thing. Did he say bear?
He said black bear, yes.
He said black
I asked him
bear.
specifically about black bear because they're a problem in my area.
Okay. All right. Well,
and that's that's like the holy grail of animals in my area. That's the most, very, everybody gets all excited about that.
Yeah, but let's forget about, what people think about them from the standpoint of emotion and just talk about whether or not, the black bear population can withstand Casey shooting an individual bear because it's after his chickens. I'm going to argue.
And me shooting a few of them, to be honest with you.
Exactly. This is the point I'm making, Casey. You hit the nail on the head. Okay. Same thing with, say, a coyote or a fox and so on. But there is no such thing as the Black Bear Protection Act like there is the Golden Eagle Protection Act, Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. So there's a difference there. Black bears are not declining. Golden eagles are declining. So there's a difference there. But I take your point. Your point is, what do I do as a rancher in an area? And I don't know enough about this to actually give you an answer, because I do know that Wyoming is an area where depredation. It's a depredation state. You can harvest eagles from that particular location, that particular state. And I don't know how they do it in other states. My guess is, of the individuals that are shot each year illegally, that's where some proportion of them come from. Again, to me, this is low-hanging fruit. Casey, you made the point in one of the episodes where you were discussing golden eagles, that low-hanging fruit for the falconry community to become involved in this. You're 100% right on that. But we just went through a description of what it took to normalize peregrine falcons. Go back to the 50s and the 60s when peregrine falcons were being harvested, unregulated harvest. They were being harvested during a period of time during which the decline was not known to people. It got to 1965 before people went, you mean numbers are decreasing? They didn't even know in 1965. They had a sense that it was something to do with legacy contaminants, organochlorines. They didn't know for sure. You think about the studies that need to be done in the places they need to be done. You're talking about Arctic Canada. You're talking about Arctic Alaska. You're talking about Greenland. You go into Arctic Canada, there are, I'm going to say, 30 communities. They're all on the coast, bar one. There are no roads.
Yeah.
The only way you're getting from community to community is by snowmobile, or by air, or by boat.
Dog sled.
Dog sled, they'll do it by dog sled if they have to. But I mean, there's hardly anybody uses dog sleds for going from community to community anymore. I mean, I mean the sheer size of Arctic Canada.
Yeah, it's true.
It's massive. And you think, okay, well, you need to understand what occupancy rates are. You need to understand what productivity levels are, like how many young are produced per year per occupied site. That is a massive job. If you're going to do a helicopter survey and you want to call it 1,000 square kilometers, that 1,000 square kilometers is probably going to take 10 to 15 hours worth of helicopter time. That 10 to 15 hours worth of helicopter time is going to cost you $2,200 per hour.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays I know a couple Ukrainians with some pretty high-tech drones that could get that survey done pretty efficiently. I mean, those things, those drones, they go up, they fly crazy mileage, and they're all infrared. I think that nowadays we should really start talking about utilizing those for studies.
Okay. Yeah, but he's talking about studies that have already been done.
No, I completely get it. There's so much work that needs to be done to get the exact. It's very difficult. I understand that, obviously. Yeah,
all right. Okay. So regardless of how it's done, whether it's the Ukrainians with their drones or it's some biologist getting in a helicopter and flying, I'm talking about 1,000 square kilometers. Okay? The Arctic is millions of square kilometers. You cannot survey that. So you've got these individual locations where biologists went in year after year after year so that Brian Millsap can eventually publish in 2023 an integrated population model using those data. So the only reason I'm raising this is because to bring it back to your golden eagle question, how do you go from one state to 2 states to 3 states to using the Bald and Golden Eagle Act offset option to increase the availability of golden eagles to falconers who want them? You do it incrementally. And it's the only way it can be done. And it's just pure, hard work. That's all. There's no getting around it.
Hopefully it sounds like the long-wingers were very motivated to get this peregrine take done. Hopefully the eagle, well, the problem is there's so few eagle falconers because there's a lot of people that would love to be eagle falconers that don't have the opportunity to do it.
Yes, totally. Now, did you get your hawk chalk, Aaron?
Yeah, I think.
Have you got it handy? Go grab that. Go grab that thing. There's the.
How about this one? Hello.
Is that the most recent? Did you just get it?
Oh no, this is an old one.
Okay, so what I'm getting at, I think I've got the numbers here. Give me half a sec. I'll see if I can pull these up for you. Okay, but it gets to the point that you're making. So
I might have started a fire with it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that. That's bad.
Al, they don't burn. We have video evidence that they do not burn.
Let's see here. Birds flown, accipiters, large falcons, micro, other. So golden eagles will be an other. So this is the percentage of birds flown from all respondents, NAFA respondents to the survey. 2.4%. That's all other. And golden eagles would be a subset of that. So I'm going to say it's like 1.5%.
Correct.
Now, right. And so your point was that you had long wingers, many of them. Currently, long wingers are 30%. So call it 31.6%.
And
so
we know you guys
Falcons
run the show, the long wing.
Yeah. No. They do run the show. You're right. Long wingers do run the show, except for guys like Heath. He's a
long winger.
He's a long winger.
He was telling us that. Oh well, I was never mind.
Yeah, but let's examine that for a second or two. So there is this, and I think Casey referred to it as a vibe at one point in time, that NAFA is run by the long wingers, and I'm pretty certain Heath corrected you on that. But the idea that long wingers had a vested interest, which is what you're referring to, Aaron, is true. So, you go back to the 1930s when people were going to Assateague and they were harvesting, trapping passage peregrines. Then in the 1970s, when Padre was established, those were all long wingers. Then you get to the point where, okay, they're extirpated from, well, certainly east of the Rocky Mountains in Canada, and for the most of continental US, it was long wingers who were mostly concerned about that. It was people like Cade. It was people like Anderson. It was people like Frank Bond. They were all NAFA leadership, and they were all long wingers, and they were all worried about the peregrine falcon. That was their constituency. If we had the same constituency for golden eagles, then the NAFA leadership would be those people whose constituency was golden or is golden eagles. That's where it stemmed from. That makes sense, does it not?
No, can't argue with that.
There you go.
It makes sense.
All right, boys. I don't know where you want to go next, but we've been going a while.
Well, it is about 10:15 East Coast, and I still have hawks to feed. So, this is, I have to say, Al, you've done an outstanding job of breaking down some very complex subjects. And
thank you for that, Al.
No, you guys are more than welcome.
Because I've been hearing pieces from people after a couple episodes, especially the one with Heath. Someone's like, "Well, this is the the reason why," and it was similar to. And you came very prepared with documents, data to really educate us, and we appreciate it. And listen, we don't, at least for me, I'm not going to speak for Aaron. I don't claim to be smart, right?
Pardon me, Casey. You broke up there for a second.
Yeah, sure. He doesn't want to hear.
We'll crank the audio on that one.
all I can say is that I represent, at least me for myself, I represent most falconers in the United States. Just simpletons, get out in the woods, pulling some vines, chasing some squirrels, having fun. But my heart is falconry, right? And I want to see falconry continue. And I want to, any issues that are in our sport, I want to see resolved.
Yeah.
And I want to get to the bottom of it. And that's why, and that's why the show is great. And you did a fantastic job of exposing some things and educating.
I appreciate that. And do you know why you and the majority of falconers like you do have the option of going out in the woods and doing what you do, simpleton or not?
Let me guess. It has something to do with NAFA,
because of
doesn't
NAFA and their sacrifice for us.
Yeah.
I'm making a joke.
Do you know who drafted the regulations?
I do not.
NAFA.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I knew that.
Yes.
I thought you were asking a specific person.
Right.
So,
and do you know of an organization called the Wildlife Management Institute?
That one doesn't really ring a bell, to be honest with you.
Okay. So the Wildlife Management Institute hosts what's called the North American. That's a conference of all of North America's wildlife agencies, provincial, state, and federal. It was the Wildlife Management Institute that invited NAFA to present at an Audubon-sponsored conference after Beebe and Webster had tried to take wild harvested gerfalcons and ship them to the Middle East. And the NAFA leadership at the time, I beg your pardon?
That's some outlaw shit right there.
That's some outlaw shit. You're right. And so what position did that put NAFA in? That put NAFA in the position where they had no option but to convince wildlife agencies that the vast majority of falconers, simpletons or not, were on the up and up, and all they wanted to do was hawk their birds.
That's it. Yeah.
Right? It was NAFA that did that.
Now, do you think that NAFA's past contributions make them immune to any kind of critical feedback?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. 100%.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I'm glad to hear you say that, Al, because some do think that they.
Yeah, we had our experience with Heath was the three of us in this, let's just call it a chat room. We did not feel like me and Casey did not feel like we were being disrespectful, and it certainly was not our intention to be disrespectful to Heath. Heath did not feel disrespected.
Yes.
But some of the feedback from from
I was
others,
part of that feedback.
Some of the others felt like we were disrespectful, right? Which that was not the intention, but the way that we perceived it, and we had a lot of people message us and say, like, see what the comments are. This is why we're not part of NAFA, is because you can't be critical of NAFA without being labeled an enemy.
No. You can 100% be critical of NAFA. I mean, you come out swinging. I can tell you right now, there are going to be people in NAFA who will respond very positively to that. But, it's kind of like, you want to complain about your prime minister, or you want to complain about your president, or you want to complain about your mayor, but you didn't vote. Like, all you want to do is bitch and complain. I'm saying, get out there, become a member of NAFA.
Yeah, we are. I'm a long time member.
I'm a longer time member than Aaron.
Yeah.
I just re-upped my membership.
Yeah.
So
I had a membership before I was a falconer. When I was 13 years old, I signed up for NAFA.
Okay, good man.
22 years ago.
Okay, good man.
All right. And I signed back up.
I've been a consistent member ever since I started falconry.
Are you saying you're only 35, Casey? Man, you look like you're about 55.
Listen, I hear it all the time. All the time.
It's all that test that he's pumping into his body.
Aging me. Like I said, Al, I'm a simpleton. I had a rough, weathered life. I'm in the fields working every day. takes a toll on your body.
We're all there, Casey. Every one of us has that background. So don't think of yourself as some victim.
No, I definitely do not. But in all seriousness, though,
Yes.
like it was disappointing because John Goodell, the Archives of Falconry guy, he like came after me specifically and was being very harsh towards me. And I tried to have I think I was very diplomatic when I was responding to him. I wasn't insulting him or being rude. I was trying to give him my point of view, and there was no reciprocation. And then when like I said, I have been a falconer for, a long time. I've been hearing things my entire falconry, journey. Yep. So the things that I'm bringing up on the show are not just me and Aaron's personal gripe. It's stuff that we hear from the other side of the aisle that we are bringing to the surface in a conversation, public conversation that can be addressed. And it's, Jeff Redig, he wanted to jump in there and say that, oh, how did you talk to all these people? And it's kind of like, it's basically like making you, like gaslighting you into like, you're making stuff up, or that you're just being critical to be critical.
Yeah. It's not scientific, but it's almost like, your estimation of populations of falcons. You're not literally counting all of those falcons.
Correct. I don't have a file on my computer with every piece of information I heard from people that were critical of NAFA. I've just been hearing things, and some things overlap and some things stick out. And I was bringing stuff to the surface. And it's like, if I have to be the guy to bring it up and look like, the asshole, for lack of a better term, then I guess I will if it makes change. And from what I've heard, and we're not going to take credit for, whatever, but we have heard that NAFA's membership is increasing and growing, and people are messaging us on the podcast and emailing us that they're joining NAFA. They liked Heath's response. They liked hearing Corey and other people, and they're going to join now, and they're getting fired up. And Al, that's the point. That was the entire point. Nothing gets done with positivity and everyone's scratching each other's back. It gets done when I was on the phone with Jimmy G for an hour and a half driving back from North Carolina from the meet. Yeah. And he's talking about men in a bar butting heads with each other. And it's like, nothing gets done unless you're butting heads with each other and you're working stuff out. Okay. And you're getting stuff into the open so that there can be improvement. And that's the point of what we're doing. Okay. Not to be just confrontational to be confrontational.
Yeah. And I'm not going to take anything away from you in that regard. But I will say that, when you refer to the idea that NAFA is long wing centric, I think I gave you an explanation for why that could potentially be perceived. But I think it's also important to say that they will say perception is reality. That's true too. But I can tell you right now, there is not anybody that I know on the NAFA Conservation Committee, the NAFA leadership, and I don't know them all, but I know a fair number of them, that are not as concerned about the kinds of things that you are concerned about to a lesser degree.
It's good.
They are just as concerned, if not more concerned. And the reason I can say that is because they're trying to do something about it. They're on committees. They're part of leadership. They're spending their time trying to make things better in the way that you guys are describing needs to be made better.
That's good. Yeah. And we're doing the same thing. It's 10:30 at night. I got to be up at 5 a.m. And and with Heath, with Corey, with all these NAFA directors that came on our show, we sacrificed our time. Aaron's wife sacrificed hours and hours upon hours of her time editing our episodes to put out. We're doing our part the same way that NAFA and their board members are doing their part. So we're not just pissing into the wind for the sake of causing drama. We want to see change, and we want to help in that change in the way that we can. But we can't help if we don't know what's going on, and we're not. No one's explaining to us what's going on.
Okay. Do you feel like you have been explained to?
100%, Al. You did.
Right. Okay. Good. Good. That's important to me, and it's important to everybody on the NAFA leadership team that I know.
Yeah.
And
all right, boys.
we've had the conversations we had with everyone from NAFA. I think were we enjoyed them. The result for me was more respect for NAFA.
Yeah.
After everyone we spoke to.
Same.
And to Casey's point, we feel like we are also contributing to the falconry community, and we're trying to get people inspired, raise awareness. We'd like to think that, even if one person joined NAFA, which I'm sure at least one, that's a positive,
Yeah.
from our conversations.
Yeah, they would
view it that
undoubtedly
way.
There would have been more, undoubtedly. Yeah. More than one is what I'm getting at. So just in terms of sheer numbers of people that have joined NAFA by virtue of the fact that you guys are talking to NAFA leaders, you are doing your bit. And, as somebody who does a podcast or, haven't done one for a while, as you've probably noticed, but I do know the amount of work that goes into these things.
Yeah.
And it's not trivial. So when you say that you're sacrificing your time and you've got family members sacrificing your time, I 100% understand exactly what you're saying, because these are not trivial tasks. I mean, I'm looking at the clock now. It's 2 hours and 47 minutes we've been chatting, plus the 10 minutes that we chatted prior to it. So it's 3 hours of talk right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 hours of your time. It's 3 hours of my time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 100%.
And that's because
appreciate the amount of work it is.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Out of most of our guests, you of all people would know how much it takes to put one of these shows out and the time it takes to get everything set up. And it's all about falconry at the end of the day. And we're doing it in our way. Your podcast is extremely organized and meticulous, and like yourself, well spoken. Everything is well thought out. We are the dirt hawker side of the room. We're more rough, and maybe we don't think through what we say sometimes. At least I can speak for myself, but that some people, they enjoy that also. So there has to be room, and that's the thing about falconry, which is so beautiful, is that it crosses over cultural and every single boundary there is, it crosses over. So so to have falconry only be this thing that's so proper and it's for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to represent.
And you wouldn't want your podcast to be the same as Jonathan's, and you wouldn't want yours to be the same as mine.
Right.
And so, I mean, I will tell you that I don't find it natural to host a podcast. I go back to Israel Madsen. Of all of us who have been on podcasts or who host podcasts, Israel was the most natural of all of us.
Yeah.
Right?
He was.
He's very, very, very good. I don't have that skill set. And so I don't try to do what you guys do. I don't try to do what John does. And I sure as hell couldn't do what Israel did.
Yeah.
So, I hope that there's a lot of overlap between your podcast and Jonathan's and mine. My suspicion is there's some, but it'd be interesting to know how much. I think you're serving a constituency that likes what you do. Otherwise, they wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Israel was the best. And when I used to listen to him when I was, years and years ago, the thing about him that I enjoyed was that he was genuinely curious and passionate. Yeah. And I would just remember him getting excited the way that, a lot of us get excited about certain topics. And I remember that translating to me on my way to work or something, dreading my day. Yeah. And it was like, that's what I even to this day, I still feel that he would bring through. And it's it's that passion that we all have. And it does get, it gets worn away at times. I think that the abatement people and raptor breeders and propagation, I think theirs gets worn away faster than ours. If I'm, but it's still there, and there's still a reason why we get out in the field and we release that bird from our glove and we start putting game under them. And it's the same whether you're a doctor or a freaking garbage man. It's the same.
Yeah. All right. So,
all right, Aaron.
In closing, let's say,
yes, sir.
Join NAFA. If you love what NAFA's doing, join NAFA. If you
you don't love what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to affect change in NAFA, join NAFA and try and affect change. Check out falconryfund.org. The Legacy Hoodmaker series is going on. And when does that end, Al?
The draw will be end of February. Hoods will be on their way by the end of March.
Okay.
And now the Falconry Fund is a tax deductible. So they'll give you a sheet that you can put in your taxes and you can get a refund. Yeah. So that's actually very beneficial.
Yeah. And Casey, you could just go on there right now and you could buy yourself, $125 worth of tickets, and you will automatically get a tax receipt as you make the purchase.
Awesome.
Perfect. And I'll just forward that right to my accountant.
And after you're all caught up with Sporting Chance podcasts, and you need something else to listen to, but don't do it until you've listened to all Sporting Chance podcasts. Check out Fat Bird, Ugly Dog.
Oh, Aaron, you're a good man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Al.
You're a good man. Yeah.
Thank you, Al, very much.
All right, gents. I enjoyed chatting to you. It was very nice meeting you.
You too.
And hope to do so in person one of these days.
It'll happen.
All right. Okay, boys.